Hi, everybody. Welcome to our series for Anatomy and Physiology. We're just going to get started with intro. So this is the basic stuff, nothing too complex, nothing too complicated. So this whole unit honestly should be pretty short. I don't expect it to be too terribly long. It's only 30-something slides, so we'll get through it pretty quick. Again, the intention is for me to be covering about the same amount of stuff that we would cover in class. This is just an alternative. This is a supplement for you guys to be able to watch this at home if you feel like you need to get some more practice in, or you missed out on something that I posted in class. So that's kind of the idea. All right, so let's go ahead and clear that there. There we go. All right, so as usual, I like to share some goals before we get started. So I'll just drag this down to the corner there. Be able to understand the differences between anatomy and physiology. That's first step type stuff. Briefly describe the various systems of the human body. So what does each system do? In our next video, we'll get into that more detail. Be able to point out the different regions of the body and the terminology medical professionals use. I think that's super important. And a big reason for that is all the other units we learn has a lot of these terms that come up again and again. So getting that knowledge early really pays off greatly here. Okay, simple, straightforward. What is anatomy? What is physiology? Well, anatomy is going to be the study of structure, whereas physiology is going to be the study of function. In layman's terms, anatomy is more of the what is it, the physical aspect of it, whereas the physiology is more of the what does it do, how does it do it, the purpose of it, its function. So the example I love to give is if I were to ask you, or if I were to state, the pancreas is a football-shaped structure found beneath the stomach or below the stomach. That would be an anatomy term. That would be an anatomy concept. Whereas if I were to mention the pancreas releases a hormone known as insulin that lowers blood sugar, that is physiology, because that's more function related. The branches of anatomy, the main branches that we go over are going to be surface and gross. So surface and gross anatomy. Surface anatomy, literally as the name implies, is surface level, whereas gross anatomy is going to be a little bit more in-depth, a little bit more layered. So in that aspect, we're talking more of the organs and what we call traditionally like our guts, that type of stuff. It's something that is a little bit more difficult to see with the naked eye. Microscopic, we don't get into too much detail. However, not a bad idea to know what histology is. Histology is a field of medicine that is all about microscopic anatomy. So these are individuals that work with tissue using microscopes. I think it's a great field of medicine, especially if you're someone who would prefer not to deal with face-to-face interaction, which for some people, they would prefer that. Oh, let's bring that back. All right. Moving on down. Structural organization. How do we organize everything? So the whole point of this, I'm going to write on the side for us here. This is moving things from small to big. So the idea is we have things at the very smallest structure, which are going to be our atoms, and then moving things all the way to the biggest structure that we're familiar with, which is going to be the organism. The atoms will bond together to form molecules. This is stuff you might have learned in chemistry if you took chemistry. Those molecules, enough of the right molecules, which are called the essential elements of life, we'll learn in our next unit, are going to create cells. Those cells will have their subunits. This is all stuff from biology. So this is like your organelles, like your nucleus, your mitochondria, etc. Enough of those cells doing the same job, you're going to call that a tissue. Enough of the tissue, more than one specifically, working together, and we call that an organ. Organs vary in size dramatically. Organs can be as small as eyes or ears or nose, and organs can be as large as the skin, which covers you from head to toe. Now, finally, when we have enough of these organs that are doing a similar job, they're accomplishing one common purpose, we call that a system. So this is when things have become a little bit more complicated, a little bit more intricate, but we're accomplishing a much more detailed purpose. And finally, all these systems working together allow for more complex life, otherwise known as an organism. Here we see exactly what I was talking about on the last slide. This is just in picture format, right? We see these atoms combining to form molecules, the molecules fusing to form a cell eventually. You have these cells that start to create tissue. The tissue would form an organ. In this case, it's forming a blood vessel. Those blood vessels are going to work together with the heart to form the cardiovascular system. And then enough of those organs systems working together, and voila, you got the organism. Last but not least for today, like I said, we're keeping it really easy to start us off, just to get our feet wet. Systemic versus regional anatomy. So funny enough, there's actually a little line under there already, so I'll just do a little circle right there. That's the version of anatomy we learned. That's the version of anatomy that has been the main method for a long, long time. The systemic approach is you're learning the body system by system. So for instance, the skeletal system, the muscular system, cardiovascular system, nervous or lymphatic. We're learning it bit by bit. This approach is more like you're building a house or building a pyramid. You need to have the base, you need to have the support beams before you can go anywhere further, right? Regional, on the other hand, is a little bit more challenging. Regional anatomy is more so you're learning the body by regions. So for instance, if you were to come into class and I were to say, guys, today we're taking anatomy and we're learning regionally. Today we're focusing on the head or the cephalic region. That means everything in the head we'd have to learn. That means, okay, all the bones of the skull, all the muscles of the head area, including face and neck, all the lymph nodes, all the blood vessels, all the organs such as eyes, nose, ears, mouth, etc., skin. We get the point, right? It becomes so much more complicated. But that used to be more primary as far as the way it was taught. Nowadays, it's definitely more the systemic approach. Okay. So guys, that's about it for our first video for the unit. Like I mentioned, not too bad. That's 7 slides down and not too much time. We'll continue progressing forward as we progress through the unit, and hopefully we continue transitioning to get a good understanding of this content. All right, guys, I'll see you on the next one. Thanks.